So welcome to episode 8 of Sit for a Spell, and happy solstice everybody. Today is the summer solstice here in the northern hemisphere. I'd also like to say happy winter solstice to those of you in the southern hemisphere. I have quite a few Australian friends who are also pagans, so you know, however you celebrate the solstice, cool, we're getting together on the weekend. But I thought because of the special occasion, it being the solstice, it might be kind of cool to get into a little detail about magical gardening. One of the things about the summer solstice is that, of course, the sun is at the zenith of its power at this time. So it is believed, it's an old magical tradition, that harvesting herbs on the summer solstice is especially powerful. They're supposed to be at the peak of their power and energy. Now there's a lot of things. It's been a rainy year here, and there's a lot of things that are still behind that normally we have more of at this time of year. For instance, the St. John's wort, which is supposed to be associated with the summer solstice and does actually grow in this area, I don't have a lot of it this year. What I do have is some wild things that grow. I'm going to get some rose petals while the summer solstice is happening. I'm going to harvest my sage, my rue. This stuff here is a version of cinquefoil. Now, for those of you who may not be aware, cinquefoil is used in witch's flying ointment. It looks kind of like a pot leaf, the different leaves that are on it, and it's got these little 5-petaled yellow flowers. In Europe, it grows close to the ground, and that's the stuff they're generally referring to in magical books, but this stuff will work just as well. This is erect cinquefoil. It's actually a noxious weed in North America. It grows everywhere. But for witches, it's used in witches' flying ointment. And also, the association with the 5-petaled flower invokes that pentagram kind of energy, so you can use it for protection spells, you can use it for calling on the energies of Venus, you can use it for earth banishing spells, right? So I have my trusty bowline here, which, I don't know, there's some, you can get these, and a bowline, it's traditionally a white-handled knife with a curved blade. It doesn't have to be this extreme like a scythe. I have what I also call my working bowline, which is a little white-handled pen knife that I keep in my purse, and it folds, and it has a regular blade, only it's got a curve just at one edge, right? And I use that when I'm out and about, but when I can, I use this. And this is done in the style of a sickle and a crescent moon, so it's got all those magical associations. Druids really like them, right? And I'm going to take advantage of the energies of the day to harvest myself some cinquefoil. Now I like to use the whole plant because I can dry it out and grind it up. It is toxic if you eat it. Please don't do that. It's used strictly for external use only. Witch's flying ointment is applied to the body, and even then you will absorb some of its toxins, but that's sort of how it does its job for witch's flying ointment. So in small doses it's harmless. So that's my little charm, just a note about taking advantage of this time of year to do harvesting. Different plants, of course, are associated with different Sabbats in Wicca. For instance, the lavender tends to be at its best bloom here around Lammas, so I'll be harvesting some of that around then too. When you're done doing your harvest, especially if you're harvesting magical herbs, make sure you leave an offering to the Fae spirits. I'll be coming back here with a little bit of Fireball whiskey I have in the fridge later and pouring it. Other appropriate offerings include wine or other sweet alcohols, honey, milk, cream, candy, or also things that help the plants to grow. Fertilizer, a good watering, you know, stuff like that. Make sure to leave it with the appropriate attitude of gratitude. Now while I'm at this, I'll speak a little bit about gardening with the moon. You can get some really great calendars that'll help you keep track of this. One calendar that I like to recommend to magical practitioners everywhere is the Llewellyn Witches calendar. It'll show all kinds of astrological information. It also tells you a little bit about different pagan holidays and significant events that have occurred on that day. If you're not really into all that information, you can generally get the same astrological information from the Llewellyn's astrological calendar. There's also an excellent calendar that people swear by called Seasons of the Witch. And there's another one, Gardening with the Moon calendar. You can Google that and order it online if all you're interested is the gardening aspect. Now, the thing to note primarily about gardening with the moon, it's believed, for those who may not be aware, that the moon has an effect on the way things grow. And it's a general practice that you plant and grow things during the waxing moon, and you winnow, harvest, weed, and transplant during the waning moon. You can get a little bit more specific than that though. The Gardening with the Moon calendar will tell you all this valuable information. It also just turned past the new moon. This is a really great time. If you're looking to plant a magical herb, this might also be a good time to do it. We're one day into the new moon. It's the summer solstice. There's a lot of energy floating around today that you can take advantage of. Different types of plants grow better depending upon the different phase of the moon that you plant them with. From the new moon to the first quarter, it's good to plant leaved plants and grain crops. So, you know, your lettuce and your kale and your corn and your wheat and that kind of stuff, cabbage, right? You'd plant that during the first quarter. From the first quarter to the full moon, it's good to plant things where the fruit is outside of or the fruit is, the seeds are inside the fruit, right? And that's, you know, apples, melons, squashes, cucumbers, right? That kind of thing. A lot of different nuts. You want to plant root crops just before the full moon or just after it. So that's, you know, your potatoes, your carrots, your radishes, you know, that kind of thing. Peanuts, I'm given to understand, are also a root crop. And then in the last quarter, that's where you want to do your harvesting, your pruning, your winnowing, and your weeding. As you'll see in a few moments, I missed the opportunity to take advantage of the best time for weeding because it was sheeting bloody rain. So my garden's a mess. But on the other hand, the plants that I planted that looked like, you know, little tiny wee things a couple days ago, since the turning of the moon, have doubled in size. So it's also better to plant during the times when the moon is going through an astrological earth sign. For those who may be complete novices to astrology, the sun isn't the only planet that passes through the different astrological signs. It's not just the little horoscope you read in the paper. Every planet, and the moon as well, also passes through all these astrological signs. And all these calendars that I mentioned will tell you when the moon passes through the different signs of the zodiac. So you want it to be in an earth sign, so Taurus, Capricorn, or Virgo, ideally, in order to do your planting and whatnot. I can tell you from personal experience that my experience is the best time to plant is during the waxing moon in Taurus. You'll get the best results more quickly because that's very much concerned with that whole agricultural energy. I also know for a fact that, well, okay, my lawn gets out of hand. It's full of, well, it's sort of a meadow. And I don't mind that because I live out of town. But I mowed one half of the lawn during the waxing moon at one point, and then I didn't get around to mowing the other half of the lawn, because it's fairly large, until the waning moon. And it was very interesting. A month later, the stuff that we mowed during the waxing moon had already grown back to a ridiculous point, and it was just starting to get to a point where it was worthy of cutting when it was done in the waning moon. So there's something for you. Do your weeding during the waning moon. That's my advice right there. And if you want to keep your lawn short for longer, do that during the waning moon too. The best time to do cutting and harvesting, ideally, is in the waning moon in Scorpio, because Scorpio is associated with those energies of death and renewal. So that's my little brief take on gardening with the moon, and now that I've done that, I'm going to show you a spell to protect your garden and increase its growth energies. So welcome to my garden. It's mostly weeds at the moment. You have to understand that I haven't really had an opportunity to grow a garden for the past, 3 or 4 years. So we just reclaimed it out of the weeds this year. Most of this is potatoes, except along that line on the very edge of the garden there, I've complementary planted corn, squash, and beans and peas. I've also interspersed garlics, beets, and beans. This complementary planting is something that the native cultures used to do. They call it the three sisters. They plant a squash, a corn, and a bean together, and then just the nutrients that they all produce help the other ones to grow together. There's all kinds of plants that grow well when you plant them together, and I now do all of my planting this way. I would Google search it rather than try to explain a bunch of things right now. Peppers and tomatoes tend to do well together as a general rule. Peas and beans will go with a lot of different things. Right? The combinations that I mentioned work. So, and as you can see pop bottles along there. That's not garbage. What that actually is an irrigation system. At the bottom of each of those pop bottles, we have holes punched. They're sprinklers, basically. And what you do is you take the hose, you fill up the pop bottle, and it disperses the water underneath the ground. And the reason why we did that is, first of all, we don't have very good water pressure here. Secondly, the Okanagan, where I live, tends to be very dry in the summer, and this way we prevent evaporation and maximize the use of our water. And so far it was pretty effective for the dry couple of weeks we had there before all the rain came. I'll have to report at the end of the summer to let you know how effective it was overall. So, practical advice as well as magical advice. Now what I'm going to do today for the spell to protect the garden is I have a bunch of different things here. I've got 4 quartz crystals. Quartz stores energy and directs it. This is why it's used as crystal matrix when people are doing, you can do them for healing purposes or whatever. I'm doing this to increase the growth in my garden. I have, and also to protect it. I also have 4 pieces of moss agate. Moss agate is this white and green stone here, and it's specifically oriented towards increasing the growth of your crops. I have a bunch of garlic. Garlic is protective, and I'm going to use this to create a protective barrier around my garden, keep away pests, which of course the strong scent of garlic will do without the magical component of its protective qualities. But there's a reason why in all the vampire movies people would put garlic around their neck and on their door. It's because it's supposed to keep away negative influences. And then, last but not least, I have this, it's actually a broken off scepter quartz, and it's a different formation of quartz. I'm using it as the center to hold the battery of the energy so that it connects to the rest of the grid. And also, this is a piece of, it's something that has become known as Rosophia, and it's actually a particular combination of minerals that's fairly common to the Rocky Mountains. The Okanagan is not too far from the Rocky Mountains, so we actually have a lot of this here. Rosophia is a copyrighted concept that supposedly only grows in one particular mine that is owned by one particular person who charges an arm and a leg at metaphysical stores for this stuff. I made this by gathering it in the local area and putting it in my rock tumbler, and I sell at my store for a fraction of the price. It's the same stone. It does what they say it does, which is communicates the energy of the divine feminine and increases your connection to the goddess. And it does do that. Always did. I always sensed it as a kid. But this is not the expensive variety. It didn't come out of the mine. I call it, what did I call it? I think I called it Sophiaite instead, because Rose Sophia is copyrighted, so I can't use it. So, I'm going to start by putting the garlics in the four corners of my garden. So that's directly north, that's east, south, and west. Right, I'm going to put the garlics at the cardinal points. I'm going to put the quartz crystals at the cross quarters. I'm going to put the moss agates next to the garlics, and then I'm going to go in the center of the garden to put my scepter quartz over top of my Sophiaite. And then that is going to direct the battery energy towards the middle. I'll do an invocation, and that'll be my spell. Try to bury your quartz crystal so the point faces upright. It will probably not always be that way once, you know, because everything shifts and changes in the ground. In it, then move inward towards the center of the garden. This may be, where does this look right, do you think, Mitch, about here? Yeah? Okay. This hole has to be a little deeper because you have to put something underneath something else. Or Sophia or Sophiaite or you can also use Gaia stone, it would be appropriate as well. And then over top of it, your scepter quartz with the point upright. Like I said, it won't stay that way, but that's where you start. Now, you can take your Athame, your bowline, your wand. I recommend a wand. The reason why is because the wand is used in witchcraft when it would not be neat to use your Athame with certain nature spirits. By this, I take Frederick Lamond's take on it, which he wrote in 50 Years of Wicca. He was one of the people who practiced with Gerald Gardner's original coven, and he said that it's probably the Fae and the nature spirits that he's talking about. You hear noise at the base of the camera, it's probably my cat. Kind of likes to do the action. Like every good witch out of town. Right? So, this is not my wand, but this is the stick that I used to dig the holes, so we're going to call it a wand. That's really all you need. Starting in the north, cast the circle. Visualize it as a bubble above you and below you, of either white or bluish-white glowing light. Then it's protected. Kind of all around the borders of the garden. Make sure the whole garden is encompassed in it. You call quarters. There's different ways you can do that. I'm just going to sing a chant. Earth my body, water my blood, air my breath, and fire my spirit. Earth my body, water my invoke the elemental energies coming in from those directions. So you feel earth coming from the north and air coming from the east. I visualize that like wind. Earth, I kind of feel the coolness of crystal, or say dirt on my hands, right? From the west, you visualize water. I see rain or waves coming in. And from the south, I see fire coming across the landscape going whoosh, right? It can help to have visualizations like sense and sound effects. Then you call upon the gods. Whichever gods you choose to call upon are appropriate. I'm going to call upon Demeter and Osiris, who are agricultural deities. Lady Demeter, Lord Osiris, I ask you, come and join me in the circle. Please grant your energies of protection to my garden and help my crops to grow. I ask you to bless me and that you empower my crystal grid to create energy growth from this garden. Now you visualize the connecting energy. What you'll probably see going on is all of the visualize the crystals in the art sending lines of energy. It'll probably be slightly greenish or white in color to the center, to that crystal where you're standing, where they focus their energy in sort of a wheel. And then you visualize the circle forming around it, and you see it rolling over your garden like a wheel with 8 spokes, and then it dissipates into the ground, flowing its blessing. And you visualize that same lines of energy connected under the ground, kind of glowing and thrumming. I kind of hear them making like sound in my head, right? And it all brings them together to create that focus point of growth, and hopefully create a much more friendly, protective aura on my garden. Now, I've got a friend who says that, you know, it's a good garden if it's got lots of weeds, because the weeds will grow just as well as the rest of the crops. So I'll have to be diligent and make sure that I keep it as clear of weeds as I can. As soon as the moon turns from the full moon, I'm going to have to go a little crazy in this abundant garden and get rid of some of that stuff. Okay? Your blessings upon my garden. Go up the mountain as you will, but when you go stay, sail and farewell. You also visualize the portals returning, however you choose to do that in your tradition. My tradition is very specific about sending them back to where they came from so that they don't cause things like flash floods and fires. Other traditions are much more, they believe that they're always there anyway, so they don't see them as quite the same kind of physical presence, and they don't believe they have to send them away. Whichever, I'm going to do a chant. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The earth, the air, the fire, the water, return, 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 return. The reason why I've chosen to chant is A, it's simple, and B, they say that plants respond to the sound of your voice. So if I'm singing to them, maybe they'll grow better. You never know. Take your wand and go to the northeast corner, because that's where it's traditional. You break the circle or you cut a doorway. You say, the circle is open, yet ever remain a circle. Merry we meet, merry we part, and merry we meet again. And merry we meet again. Now that I have 8 episodes, I'll be putting them on a DVD, which will be available by shop or my website, thethreadsofblindness.net, if anybody's interested. And otherwise, I'll see you guys again in 2